Hey guys, we are back at Rock Harbor Church. In this video, I'm gonna show you our entire X32 mixing solution that we're using for this small church in this very traditional space. If you already watched the other video we did at this church, that'll provide you with more context on kind of the bigger picture of what we're dealing with here and how we're going about improving our audio, visual, and lighting system. So make sure you don't forget to watch that episode. It'll make more sense. All right, so the thing I'm most happy about is when you look right here, look how there's like nothing going on right here, okay? So I'm gonna put in some footage right here of what this looked like just a few days ago. It was a disaster. I'm not gonna try to be nice about it, but it was just complete disaster. Cables running everywhere. Remember, this church closed on this building about 2 months ago. So the setup they had here was like kind of portable. They're also having to use the setup for other events in town when the church was doing things. So it just got messier and messier over time. But now the church is at a place where it's like, hey, we obviously have some long-term audio goals, but let's just redo how the entire audio system is set up so that in the short to mid-term, we know what's going on. We're not using all these unnecessary cables. Look at all the cables just sitting around here. This is after I cleaned everything out. We've got some more cables back here as well. Right now, I have them separated on pews so that this week at some point, I'll go to Lowe's. You guys know my favorite storage system, using the bins and some shelving. So we're still working on having storage space to do that effectively. But we'll get bins, we'll start separating out cables. And the other thing I gotta do now that I cleaned everything out and reassembled it is I'm gonna order some like cables that are the right length for the job. You'll see here as we walk through the gear what I mean. With the speaker system, this is the church's speaker system they've been using for their portable setup. We got this JBL, we got the tops and subs. Before, these speakers were like back here against the wall. And that causes some issues, especially with dealing with feedback when your vocal mics are way up here and your speakers are behind the vocal mics. It's just gonna create a disaster. As you try to game things properly with your vocal mics, it's gonna be picking up audio coming from the speakers. So we tried to move the speakers as far forward as we could without completely getting rid of these sight lines here from the side pews. It's really not a problem for 95% of the congregation, but as you can see, you're about to lose me here behind the speaker. But for our pastor, he's usually up here preaching. He actually starts to get in front of these speakers, but anybody from pretty much anywhere in the room is gonna be able to see it just fine. We'll get back to the video in just a moment, but first, a word from our sponsor, OptogateOnline.com, who provided for us these infrared automatic microphone gates. So one of the most common issues in a live sound environment like a church worship service is the open mic problem. This is when a vocalist or someone who's speaking steps away from their microphone and that mic still picks up all of the noise from the stage, from your drum set or other instruments. And sure, you could use the gate that's built into your mixing console, but the problem with these noise gates is that they rely solely on audio levels. And in some environments, it can be nearly impossible to dial in the right parameters for your noise gate, especially when you have a significant amount of stage noise. Set your threshold too high on a noise gate and it's not gonna let through the softer vocal parts, and then if it's too low, it's gonna let through too much stage noise. So the solution is infrared technology that accurately detects when someone is singing or speaking in front of the microphone. Setting this up is so simple. Place your microphone in the mic clip on your mic stand, and then you can plug in your Optogate to the end of your microphone, and then you have your XLR cable that outputs audio to your stage box or mixing console. Next, you can set the distance for the infrared trigger with a small screwdriver. You can set it to trigger for vocalists who are as close as 2 inches away or a farther throw up to multiple feet. So there are multiple use cases for this in a worship ministry environment. First, you could use it for vocalists to eliminate stage noise for when they back away from the microphone. You can also use it for talkback microphones for mix engineers like what we do here, or for your music director who is on stage. They also have a model that's designed specifically for lectern microphones. So this is great if you have someone reading scripture or preaching from a pulpit. I've used Optogates for our talkback microphones for over 2 years now, and I cannot recommend them enough. It's so much more convenient inconvenient than pushing a button to talk or making sure that a switch is flipped. My favorite setting is to turn the distance all the way down so it only turns on when I'm about 2 inches away. I lean into the microphone and the band members can hear me on stage, but as soon as I lean back or step away from the microphone, it automatically turns off in their ears. To learn more about Optogate automatic microphone switches, go to optogateonline.com or click the link in the description. Now let's get back to the video. The other thing I feel like just placing those speakers there is it does make it more ideal for just the coverage of the room that we're getting from this PA system. Eventually, someday, we'll be able to invest in some nice PA speakers they're gonna be flown so they don't look like an eyesore. We'll get there eventually, but for the midterm, this is a good solution for us. So the other major thing we kind of thought about layout-wise for the sound system is where do we want to put our stage boxes? So we have two S16 stage boxes to work with. One of them actually before, it was in the rack, but it just wasn't even used. Nothing was plugged into it. So what's nice is we actually have two stage boxes. One, you'll see that black box there on the back of the stage, and then one is behind this sub that's over here to my left. So now we have 32 channels of inputs, 16 outputs split between those two stage boxes. Gives us a lot of flexibility, and we actually don't even really have to use any of those little sub snakes. We could eventually if we want to, but to me, the less connections, the better when I'm setting up a sound system like this from scratch. So let's head on over to this first stage box that's over here. It's kind of a mess, and this is what I was talking about of getting the right cable length for the job. So we have this little black cover here. There is a lid to this box, but we kind of decided we just want it to be at low profile, and this fabric kind of works right now. When you look in here, it's obviously a mess, and we have a lot of connections happening like between our wireless mic units and the stage boxes and stuff like that. And the problem is we're just using a lot of individual cables, where if we have like little 3-foot snakes that are like XLR to XLR or 1/4 inch to female XLR, I'm gonna be able to like clean this up. You know, this isn't gonna be like a Summit integrated design job over here where everything's zip tied like crazy, but even just getting those little sub snakes is really gonna clean up these connections back here. So you can see a lot of the cables, they come, fire the system on. The cables come, you know, they're down behind all the units, and then we left enough rack space under here so that they can come up right underneath and plug right into the snake. Yeah, and then this rack, it's got the S16. These are basically half of our inputs on stage, and then we have outputs for, the first 4 are for 2 stereo in-ear monitors right here, the PSM 300s. And then we have more outputs here. We have a sub main, and then we have a fill speaker that I'll show you guys in a minute, because the side pews here, they need a fill speaker because they're not in front of really any speakers. And then we have the Shure wireless handheld mics. These are for vocal mics. And then we have a handheld and a wireless mic as well for our passer. He actually uses like a headset mic. And we've got a couple other Sennheiser handhelds as well. So these are all wireless mic that take up inputs over here. So again, just getting little sub snakes on the back of this that come up here, and I'll probably end up labeling them better. And then up here we have a P16 alternate hub, so we can go ahead and plug the P16 units into here as we need them. In my opinion, when it comes to P16s, now that we're in a permanent environment, if the band size kind of fluctuates from week to week. We're a smaller church. Sometimes we have a full band. Sometimes we have 1 or 2 worship leaders with a ton of backing tracks. It just fluctuates a lot. So if you're not using a P16 or something, just get it off the stage. It looks ugly, clean it up, and then just easily unplug it from here. So that's kind of my theory too. Just like if it's not being used, don't leave it out, like for a particular Sunday. Like I really think as worship techs, take the extra 2 minutes to like clean stuff up, put it where it needs to go, and then, put it back whenever someone's actually gonna use it again. Then the next thing we have is our Play Audio 12. So we have this is our audio interface for playback right now, for track. So it's got a long USB cable that runs to the front of the stage to plug into the iPad that usually the worship leader is controlling. And fortunately, this USB cable is long enough to run to the worship leader or someone who's playing keys. It can get to most of our stage. It must be like a 25-foot USB cable. And then of course, we got the ferment up here for powering everything in this rack. So again, this is stuff they had. We did not buy anything new. It was just like really reorganizing, cleaning stuff up. This little setup here, this is for the Lutheran church that's still meeting at this church prior to us on Sundays, and they really, I think they really insisted on having their own little system where it's an analog board with wireless. So we're just making sure that's functional. But even for them, to make sure they're good to go, we just have one little power strip button here. They hit that to turn it on. I still have to tell them that's how they turn it on because they'll probably freak out if it's not on come Sunday. And it fires up their little system. That's those speakers that you see, that Bose speaker up there. That's for their system right here. Speaking of power, it's important as you're setting up a new system for the first time, just think about where are your power sources, how are you managing that? Not all of us have the fancy, automated power sequencers to turn things on or off. So in this environment, we've got power at this rack. That obviously needs to be turned on. And then we had these really long power strips. You can see one of them right here. This was like prior to this, it was like back here, and it was part of the huge mess that we had. And then this is all still a mess because, again, I set it up just to know where everything is and how we want to connect everything. Now that it's set up and functioning, I'm gonna go ahead and take time to order the right length cables for everything. I'm gonna get more, probably some Velcro. I really like the Velcro for cables. It's like gaff taping something, but it's Velcro instead. So you can easily just tear it off the carpet. And it's easy for cable management. So I'll get some more of that as well. So this won't look, nearly as much as messy as it does right now. But this supplies power to this speaker system, so I hit the power there, and then over there's another same exact power strip on that side of the stage that supplies power to those speakers as well as to the drum set and the bass guitar rig or anything on that side. And this is that fill speaker that I was talking about right here. You'll notice on the other side, it's actually like an organ and a choir loft, so we don't have pews over there. Yeah, we'll probably have some sort of chairs eventually if we end up getting rid of that stuff. But for at least these people over here, they can still hear things clearly thanks to this little portable speaker that's functioning as a fill. And I'm taking the main left-right mix, sending it into just a mono matrix, and that's what they're getting when they're listening to this. So it still gives us the ability to remotely control how loud this is compared to the other speakers. Let's briefly touch on our instrument setups. So the church had this old Korg keyboard. I think it was donated. So right now we're actually just using the internal piano sounds from this keyboard. It's really not that bad. And it's actually pretty simple functionality here. You have the easy labels to click on what sound you want. And one thing I did do, again, in the nature of upgrading things with stuff that we already have, was going from a mono keyboard setup to a stereo keyboard setup. Before they were just using one mono output, and keyboards don't sound great when they're in mono. You really want to be able to take advantage of that stereo sound. And then we had a bunch of extra DI boxes, so I had a second DI box. So now we have both left and right audio going to our stage box, and we have stereo keys. Here's that worship leader setup I was talking about, wireless microphone, and then iPad connected to the interface. I did run a little power strip out here, was able to kind of hide it under the carpet here. So now the piano and this workstation has power. And then over here, we just have a simple acoustic rig, a DI box with a cable. It's kind of hidden back here. Again, when we have better cable management storage system, we'll be able to put them away. Then the other thing I found is the church has this nice little Ampeg bass DI. So it's called the Scrambler. So it's similar to a Sans amp or something like that. And then there's this electric drum kit. Previously, it was over on the floor beside the stage. And I was like, hey, why don't we move it up here? And everybody else was like, oh, that's a great idea. So sometimes, I don't know, it's just let's put it on the stage, and we got plenty of room for it. It's an Alesis Strike. So this is the same brain we actually use at South Fellowship Church. Right now, we're just sending master left and right out of this into the stage box. So we do have that stage box that's down here beside the stage. Looks like a mess right now because I have not had time to order the right cable sizes in and stuff like that. I'm not gonna Velcro things down yet until I know I'm gonna use those things. But here's a good example. Look at this. So this is for an in-ear unit, and this is the cables these are the cables that are being used to make this connection from, you know, your outputs from your stage box. It's using an adapter into like a 1/4 inch cable into this. And hey, it works for now, but this is definitely worth like just spending 10 bucks on Amazon to get a cable where you're not using these adapters. Yeah, so then I'll clean this up, but it's really nice having another S16 over here. And we have plenty of other inputs available now. That other stage box on the other side is pretty much maxed out with inputs because we have the tracks over there that take up like 5 inputs. We are separating out click and guide, percussion, pads, guitars, so that we can have control of that back at front of house. And then yeah, here's an example of some P16s that we have. So this is probably gonna be the bass player's P16. And I'll just go ahead and I might actually end up putting that P16 hub over here, because I think for the most part, the people who have to use P16s will be our backline musicians, and it'll be easiest for them to be able to just plug into the hub maybe over here somewhere. Or maybe I put that hub kind of hidden back here behind these banners, then it'll be in a nice central location, run the output from the stage box into it, give the hub power, and then it can supply power to all the P16 mixers. Just an update on the whole projection situation. So we have the screens here to put a screen up there and then also up there. So hopefully soon this short throw projector won't be here, and that'll also really significantly impact the aesthetic of the stage. I actually also hope that we'll be able to just like leave the current, you know, old school setup we've got behind the curtain. You know, we've got the communion table, the lectern. I think these things could actually just be set up all the time, look, you know, make it look tasteful and nice. Because to me, I love this traditional vibe of this sanctuary. Okay, to sum up, I probably spent about 6 hours on a Sunday afternoon and then a Monday morning doing everything that I just showed you. Tearing out all the old equipment. I would separate all the cables. They were all over the floor around the room or on the pews. Just taking inventory of what's going on. You could even write down your inventory too if you really want to be exact with what you have. And then once it's all cleaned out, then you can go through and start strategically thinking about stage box placement. Where do you have power for things, and where do you want to put your speakers? This is just kind of foundational stuff you want to actually spend some time thinking about. So then when you start building on it, you're not going to have any regrets later down the road. So that's enough about the stage audio overhaul that we did with the system. Now let's head on back to the tech booth and we'll talk about the mixing console. So now I'm back at our front of house mixing console. We have an X32 producer. So this console does not even have scribble strips on it. I thought it was the compact at first, but then when I look closely, I'm like, oh, when I go through fader banks, like you're kind of flying blind. So anyways, in the spirit of making do with what we have, the X32 producer is actually still a very capable console. It's got 32 channels of inputs. It's got the 16 mono mix buses or be 8 stereo mix buses to work with. And there was really no strategy to how we were laying out channels and buses, making use of like a matrix for your live stream. So what I want to do is walk you guys through basically how I reconfigured this console. One thing I do consider when I'm doing this type of thing, especially with the X32, is I do take into consideration how things are being plugged into the stage box on stage, because to make things simple, it's nice to keep things kind of one-to-one as much as you can. But when you start moving the location of instruments or vocal mics around the stage, then maybe you have to be flexible about that and utilize some of the one-to-one patching that you could use with the X32. So on our stage, inputs 1 through 16 are on stage left, inputs 17 through 32 are on stage right, and then we have outputs 1 through 8 on stage left, and then 9 through 16 on stage right. So I'm using that kind of layout in mind. And then the first thing I had to do with this console was give it a firmware update. It actually hadn't been updated probably since the day they bought it. So it didn't even have the 4.0 firmware on it, where you have much more flexible routing. So if I go to the routing section, you guys are probably familiar with the new feature to use user inputs and then user outputs. So underneath routing, what I prefer to do is to kind of work off the user inputs, especially for all my input sources. So then I can choose, whatever source, a local input on the console, a input from Stage Boxes, USB inputs. It's always going to give you the best flexibility with the X32 to use your user inputs. So you can see for my custom outputs on this console, these are the outputs that are then going to be routed to our Stage Box. You'll see that the first few outputs, like 1 through 4, are used for 2 stereo in-ear packs. They're pulling from mix buses 1 through 4. And then this number 5 is not being used at all. Number 6 output, coming from that Stage Box closest to our fill speaker, that is for a matrix I'm using for the fill speaker. And then we come down here to 7 and 8. This one's for our main right speaker. And then we have our main center, or basically our subwoofer output. That's what's being used here for output 8. And then we go to the other side of the stage for our outputs, and some of this routing is actually kind of outdated. I can go ahead and clear some of this off here because one of my in-ear packs is on that side of the stage because we kind of ran out of outputs on this side of the stage. That works there, and then I have my main left output and then my subwoofer output for that side of the stage. So then I configured those outputs the way I wanted them here, and then when I go to my AES50 output routing, when I go to my AES50A network, you can see here, going out AES50 1 through 8 is outs 1 through 8, that's going to the Stage Box on stage left, and then outs 9 through 16 go to Stage Box on stage right. I am going to use our user outputs for flexibility with sending multi-track audio to my computer when I want to do a multi-track recording that we could then, edit down afterwards, or if I want to do like a virtual sound check. There's some other routing work that's going to have to be done here with like our P16 to make sure those are good to go. I'll probably, again, about 90% done this work, but you guys can see the big picture of how I'm setting this up. So then with our channel layout, I'm going to go ahead to our full channel view. Again, I want to think through like how can we kind of categorize groups of vocals and mics and instruments together in a way that makes sense, and also in a way that makes sense kind of trying to keep things one-to-one with how you plug it on stage. So our first 4 channels, it's our pass-through microphone and then our speaking handheld microphones for like announcements and stuff. So that's what the first 4 are ready to use. It's all plugged in. If I went to the Stage Box, it would be 1, 2, 3, and 4, as I see it here at the console. And then we have our worship vocals 1, 2, 3, and 4 on channels 5 through 8. Again, that's how I would see it plugged in on stage. And I do have the flexibility, if I need to go into an individual channel, I can still patch in, whatever Stage Box input I want. But again, for the most part, I want to keep it simple for someone to know, oh, it's channel 8 on the mixing console. There's a good chance it's going to be input 8 on the Stage Box. And then we have our audio interface for tracks. So we have our click channel, keys, guitar tracks, percussion tracks, and then a pad tracks. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 channels taken up from tracks. Unfortunately, none of them are stereo. These are all mono track feeds. And then we have an extra channel, channel 14 right now. I just kept it blank. And then what I did is I put 15 and 16 are for the keys. So these are the last 2 inputs on the side of the stage where the keys are. Now we have stereo keys. So you can see these channels are linked and they're good to go. Then the next 4 channels I reserved for guitars. So guitar 1, guitar 2, and then we have bass guitar, and then we have all these additional channel inputs that we can use here. And then I also have a crowd microphone that was set up on the front of the stage just for in-ear monitor mixes. And then we have our drum set. Right now we are using the drums just mixed down at the Alesis Strike drum brain, and we're getting a master left-right mix from there. Then that gets sent here. But eventually the Alesis Strike does have individual outputs for the different drums. So I'm gonna get a subsnake to be able to send those outputs back here, and that's gonna give us more control at front of house for the drum set. So I'm gonna see in future weeks as I get that subsnake here, I might configure that a little bit differently. What's nice about that Alesis is that the drummer can actually have his or her own channel that they can kind of mix how they wanna hear their drums from the Strike, but then we can have, unadulterated feeds of the drums coming back here that aren't going to be affected by what they do. So that's how we have them set up at South Fellowship Church. It does take up some extra channels though to do it that way. Another thing I want to point out are how I'm organizing DCAs for the channels. So you can see here I have my vocals in my number 1 vocal DCA, and then we have tracks and a tracks DCA. We have our keys and guitars in what we're calling the band DCA, and then we have our drums in their own DCA. So if I go to our DCA groups, you can see over here, we have our vocals, instruments, tracks, drums, a couple blank spots, and then we have like our computer DCA, just so that when you're in that home page on the DCA on the console, you pretty much can have almost full control of your mix when it comes to the groups of instruments just from this one page. While I'm thinking about it, I am tempted to actually have like another speaking microphone DCA, maybe right here. So I would just go in, I would just probably label it white to match the speaking microphones. I'll just call it speaking, and then I'll bring it up, and then I'll go ahead and select the right little DCA selector here. This good old M32, X32 edit software, it really did save me a lot of time in getting all this stuff configured, so I highly recommend using it if you're gonna be setting up an X32. I'm just connected to it over Wi-Fi because it's plugged into our network here at the church. But yeah, that's how I set up a easy DCA. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave it on and unmuted because, man, the amount of time in my life I've wasted trying to figure out why am I not getting signal from this channel. I see the signal coming in, the channel faders up, it's sending to masters or whatever, and it's because the DCA was muted. The amount of time I've wasted in my life, it's pretty sad to think about. I probably wasted like 2 to 3 minutes with this console because of that same exact problem. So when you set up DCAs, don't forget that they're there and they could be muting audio, but it's not very obvious that they are. Let's talk about busing things, okay? So you can see our individual channel layout here, but my mixing blueprint theory, this is the one we talk about a lot in our courses that we do. Check out Worship Ministry School, sign up for those courses. And the way we do this is instead of sending your individual vocal mic directly to your main left-right mix, you'll actually see here that I have it disabled. It's not going to the main stereo out. Don't want it going to our sub either, because we can send individual channels to the sub this way. Don't want to do that. What we do is first we go to our sends page, and then you're going to see I created 2 stereo buses. Let me go to my buses page so you can see that better. We have a vocal bus and a band bus, and they're stereo. They have left and right, and these buses are set up to actually be groups. This is a weird quirk with this edit software. I actually have to go onto the mixing console to configure the bus to be a group, but effectively what that means is literally just a pass-through bus, right? Where all the same amount of levels from the vocals are gonna be sent through it's gonna be post-fader basically. It's gonna be sent through the vocal bus and it's gonna be processed. So we're gonna add on basically just some extra compression to it. I like to add some group compression to my vocals, and then this bus is sent to the main output. Same thing for instruments. If I go back to an instrument channel, like our keys, if I go to the main channel page, you'll see it's not being sent to the main outs directly, but first it's being sent to the instrument bus, and you can see that it's turned on right here with this little power icon. And you can see as I go to vocals go to the vocal bus as a group. And again, it functions as a group, so it's not like I'm sending a pre or post fader mix to it. It's basically however the vocals are set on the main fader, that's how it's gonna be sent here to that group. And then if I go to my keys, my instruments, you can see it is sent there. I can disable it by clicking that button off. And same thing for instruments. I'm just gonna go into our bus for the instruments, and I'm gonna be able to add some light compression. So this is stuff that I'm gonna add at rehearsal when we have that Thursday night, and as we mix it, dial it in Sunday. Hopefully by Sunday, it should all be good to go. Then for our live stream mix, what this does is it makes it so we can use a matrix, and a matrix that we have the flexibility for our live stream to be like, hey, we want just generally more vocals or more band or less vocals or less band. So if I go to our buses here and matrices, you can see here we've got our live stream matrix mix, Remember, a matrix mix, it's kind of like a bus for buses. What's cool is a matrix mix, you can send, a master mix to it. If I were to go to our buses, and if I go to the sends from my vocal bus, you can see here, we have it going into the matrix mix. Actually, I guess haven't got there yet. I gotta turn that on. And then for my band bus, I wanna send that to my broadcast matrix as well. So now I would just go into here if I felt like for our live stream mix, we need to make any adjustments to that. Hey, it's Jake from the future. So I had more time to get this set up. This was for rehearsal about 2 days after the video that you're watching. So what I did is I created another bus. This is a mono bus that we're gonna call speaking bus. And what I ended up doing is all vocals go to this bus, all the instruments plus our Pro Presenter computer go to this bus. And then we can put group processing on all those things here. And then our speaking microphones go to this bus. So these two buses, the vocal bus and band bus, you'll see here that they output to the main left-right mix in the room, but the speaking bus does not. So with the speaking bus, I'm primarily using this one to have an additional layer of compression and maybe a bit more of a boost for any speaking microphones. I find this can be handy sometimes, especially for a live stream matrix mix. So then what happens is on this bus, if I go to sends, you'll see that is being sent to this matrix broadcast left and right for the live stream. So that's kind of my quick way of setting up buses here on the X32. Of course, there's other ways you can do it. We'd love to hear your ideas below. So that's it, guys. That is our entire mixing console layout so far. Again, I kind of wish I could show you what it was like before, but I think I actually ended up overwriting the old scene completely just so we never recall it. But again, things just weren't, there was no real strategy to it. And that was also hindering our ability to how we're producing our live stream mix, how you're navigating the fader banks on the console. For the most part, because the producer doesn't have the scribble strips, when I'm mixing, like I have to use like one of the iPads here. It works okay, and then of course it's just so much easier for me to jump around the different channels. So that wraps up this small church X32 audio overhaul. I hope you guys found it helpful, and you can see that, like, man, it's important obviously to like establish a good foundation with your sound system, have a good strategy, make sure your mixing console is going to serve your purposes at your church. And even with an old X32 producer, you can make do. It's still a powerful console. You could still produce a great sounding mix. And then also don't hesitate to customize things to your own needs. I kind of have this like general mixing blueprint template that I use and that I showed you guys. We talk about it in our courses a lot, but then you can just kind of tweak it to your liking and to whatever makes sense for your church. I always get a little concerned when people are like, send me your mix template. I'm like, well, I don't want to send you this mix template because it really might not serve your church that well and it might hinder you. I'd rather you learn those concepts that you can then go build your own template that you're going to know from front to back, and that's how you're going to understand how all this routing logic works. So if you do want to learn all that, make sure you do check out worshipministryschool.com. At that website, we've got online courses that you can sign up for pretty much on demand. And then if you actually want to work with a member of our team and talk to someone about your custom goals for your ministry, you can hit that apply button. You'll schedule a call with one of our team members in the next day or two, and we'll be able to get to know you and your ministry, and we'll be able to make a plan for helping you guys move things forward. And sometimes that might involve one of our team members coming to your church to kind of do what I did here, to like redo everything and make things more organized. That can definitely expedite the process. So check out worshipministryschool.com. I'd love to get in touch with you guys. Thanks for watching. Leave a like, share this video with your friends, and we'll see you next time.